Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. This is a continuation of my updated in-depth guide series. We're on to fire. As per usual, in the pinned comment in the comment section as well as the description of the video, you'll find timestamps to each relevant section of the guide. So if you're looking for just the might section, single target AoE range, or precision, you can find those timestamps there. Now, this video won't have a tanking section. You'll see a timestamp for a tank section, but basically that's just going to be me talking, referring you to the video that I made this month about everything you need to know about fire tanking. That goes into much more detail. There's no point of covering fire tanking here when everything is going to be covered in that video. So I will link that video in the description and the comment section as well as I'll talk about it in the guide video itself just in case you need a refresher. So take care, guys. Thanks for watching. Okay, so in terms of a spec for fire, it's what you'd expect for a superpowered ability. So superpowered, critical attack chance, critical attack damage, might and power, and then I go everything else into health. So iconic powers, you're taking Robot Sidekick, Neo Venom Boost. You don't have to take Freezing Breath for melee. That's just something I had to carry over from a different build. Super Speed, you would be taking Dervish for a melee build. So if you are Super Speed with fire, you could get away without using Dervish. I'm just saying that if you are Super Speed, you definitely want to take down the Dervish, and you definitely want to take Speed Drain as well. Because this is going to the melee I'm going to be showing is a gem spam build. In the weapons, whichever you like is familiar with you. I used to do dual, but you can use whatever you'd like. Now, going back to skill points, I do have a lot of people mention why don't you spec prec for your weapon taps and such like that. I can't tell you how many times where I'm DPSing, like say like a bounty or an elite raid, I'm standing right beside another DPS at 342, whatever, we have similar stats, similar gear, etc. And then he'll get one shot and I'll still survive with like 10-15% health. Because he's put his skill points into prec, so he gets a little extra weapon tap damage. I'm putting my skill points in health for survivability. Now, that DPS is dead for 5 to 10 seconds before he gets a res, etc. Now, think how much damage you're losing in that 5 to 10 seconds. Now, compare that to your weapon tap damage. So, my philosophy is always to take survivability. You can put 100 skill points of precision or whatever you like to get that 10% extra, but I will 100% always endorse survivability. Even if you're at right DPS, doesn't matter. You know, if the tank doesn't pull an ad and hits you first, etc. So that's my philosophy with DC Universe Online, and that's what I'm going to share in these guides. So in terms of gear, you're going to have Blast Adapter in your weapon mod. Head mod is going to be whichever supercharge you're running. Could be Neo Venom Boost, could be Fireball Barrage, could be Speed Drain, whichever. You're just going to have a supercharge boost. Neck mod is going to be Escalating Might. Back mod, there's really nothing that applies to fire might. Since I'm dual spec between tanking and DPSing, I just have accelerated Stoke Flames. There are some builds you can get with Stoke Flames, so that's why it's handy as well. Chest mod's going to be Penetrating Strikes. Leg mod's nothing scales, so don't even worry about it. Hand mod's going to be Max Damage. And foot mod's going to be Dashing Combos if you are Super Speed and if you're using Whirling Dervish. Your trinkets, etc. So you got your pet trinket, you got your orbital supply drop, DPS trinket. So artifacts are going to vary depending on it. So we got Transformation, we've got Grim, we got Strategist card. We're going to be using Eye of the Gemini, specifically in a Gem Sand build. So you're going to be swapping. I'll cover this in the rotation itself, but you'll be basically, since you're using Mass Debt, which I'll once again cover in the loadout, but Mass Debt is a channel ability. You can swap your artifacts on that channel and be able to hit a supercharge. So there's no point, since you're only going to be running a supercharge every 30 seconds, so you might as well have that extra 30 seconds of damage with Strategist card, or say if you're running like Linear's Amulet, so that you don't have to have Gemini on the entire time. Now, if you're Xbox or Switch or PS4, possibly, because you might have a slower transition on artifact swapping. So if you did, you'd have that. But I'll touch on those finer points when I touch on the actual rotations. But like I said, for fire, you're going to be sitting at about 5 artifacts. Unless you want to take the buff artifacts. Actually, 6 if you include heat vision. So, but the fire has a lot of builds. Fire is an extremely versatile power set. It's probably the most versatile power set in the game in terms of the support role as well. So you can run Transformation, Strat, and Grim. Grim will set up your Burning PI because I'm not running like Stoked Flames or like or Inferno or Engulf. Then you have Gemini if you're a gem spam build. So you have Pollux Gaze. You have Lanier's Amulet for when you're not running Snuff Out. So if you're running like say Absorb Heat and Heat Vision. And then on a single target, you can use an Amulet, or also on a melee build, you can drop Strategist card and run Amulet. If you're running Heat Vision or Heat Vision on a single target build or a range build, then you need Soul Amplifier. So there's quite a few artifacts you need to, not necessarily for fire, but if you want to maximize your potential for fire, then yeah, it's a lot of artifacts because there's a lot of different builds and a lot of different situations you can have for fire. So. And I'll cover that in the loadouts here as well. But if you want to maximize fire DPS, you're going to be looking at a lot of artifacts because even then you want to be swapping in like Philosopher's Stone and Dead King Scepter and stuff like that. So you're looking at a pile of artifacts. So that's you can still do perfectly fine damage without that. But if you're looking to maximize fire, because there's so many different variations of so many different loadouts and rotations, you need as large an artifact pool as possible. So for augments, you can be looking at Might in your Adaptive and Might in your Origins. And then you can't see my generator mods, but my generator mods are going to be Might as well as my reds. And my blues are obviously going to be health for fire. Okay, so this is going to be the first of two melee builds. This is going to be more my focused like gem spam melee build. So it is going to be using Dervish. So basically just using Dervish, Wildfire, and Mass Detonation. Just cycling between those three powers. You've got Robot Sidekick, Speed Drain, Fireball Barrage. You can have Neon Venom Boost on. It's really your preference in terms of what supercharges you want to run. But this is going to be strictly like a gem spam build. So one of those groups that are just spamming Caster's Watch or green circles. Then you've got basically the supercharges to make up for that. So the only difference is the artifacts. I do have Strategist card on because I'm going to swap to Gemini when I need to run a supercharge, which I'll cover in the rotation how to do. If you are like a console build that can't really open their inventory and swap artifacts, I mean, just drop Strategist card. Strategist card is not going to proc off dots or supercharges regardless. So you're not, and if you're looking at like the ads and like say the QE at the beginning of QE or even like the beginning of Flash to the Future, those ads just melt. I mean, at maximum you're going to get like one or two rotations out of Strategist card. So really there's no point to have it on because the ads are going to be dying too quickly anyway because you're going to have like 3 or 4 DPS all dropping gem circles. So they're just going to die instantly. So at that point you might as well drop Strategist card because you're not going to be getting any beneficial damage out of it. Maybe like 1 proc rotation. So worst case scenario, if you can't always swap to it, then just put on either Gemini full time. And like I said before, in your head mod, just run whatever supercharge, one of the ones you're running. So if you're using Fireball Barrage, then use that. If you need Venom Boost, I prefer to run New Venom Boost just because if you're melee Fireball Barrage, you don't want to be directly in the face for melee for a Fireball Barrage because of how the projectiles are. So you want to be kind of like mid-range-ish, which at this point you're not going to be because you're using Dervish and dashing combos. So I find it a little bit more straightforward to use Neon Venom Boost. Neon Venom Boost is also very handy for Mass Det. Like your Mass Det crits are going to be through the roof on Neon Venom Boost, so it works out anyway. And then you got your Speed Drain, just your 25%er. So let's get in. I'll show you what the rotation will look like here. Okay, so you get the gist of the melee rotation there. Let me just pull it up here. So 1.2, 1.4, 1.2. The only reason why that's below a million is because you can go back to the rotation. I tap canceled on Dervish instead of doing the dashing combos. 1.2, 1.3. So it's this rotation is designed to be a gem spam rotation as well. That's why it's only 3 powers. So what I mean by that is that when you're using the channel on Mastet, so Mastet, Gemini, Mastet hits, and I have Gemini ready to proc. So same thing, if I was going to be in combat, I could pop Speed Drain. If I'm going back into Snuff Out, I can go back to Strategist card and then continue on my rotation. Just like I normally would with Strategist card. I have Strategist card back on. Same thing, so if I'm going to be, let's take off Grim 2. Just so that there's a little bit less chaos here. Same thing, so I'll wait for Speed Drain to come back up. So my normal rotation, I'm going to be doing Dervish, Wildfire, and then Snuff Out. I can pop on, sorry, my example in the wrong spot. So yeah, so Dervish, Wildfire, on the Snuff Out move I can hit this, go into Dervish again, and then on the Snuff Out I can go back to Grim or back to where'd my Strategist card go? Sorry, my inventory is kind of all over the place. So, but you see the example. So the reason why you're switching off on Strategist card is because your the Gemini is not going to proc off. Your Strategist card is not going to proc off supercharged hits anyway. So, I mean, you can afford to lose Strategist card procs for 10 seconds because it's not going to proc off supercharge anyway. So, say if you're using like Fireball Barrage, so I put that on instead of Neo Venom Boost. So we'll put Grim on just for the sake of having Grim on. So like I said before, wherever your inventory is going to be comfortable. So what I'm going to be doing is hitting my 3 powers on Snuff Out. I'm going to swap in Gemini instead of Strategist card, hit my supercharge, and then go back. So I got Dervish, Wildfire, Snuff Out. I'm switching into the Gemini, using Fireball Barrage. I'm proccing that back into Dervish. And on Snuff Out, I'm switching back to Strategist card and then continuing on my rotation. And that's all it is. So it's not like I have to do this all the time. I only have to do it when I have a supercharge. So if even your gem spam, everything is 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, I only have to do that. So it's not even like it's putting a lot of pressure on you. Just every 30 seconds, you have to switch to Gemini in a gem spam rotation. Like I said before, this may be difficult for like Switch or Xbox, maybe for PS4. I know plenty of players that do this on PS5. On PC, it's straightforward. It just depends on where comfortable is on your loadout. But same thing with like a controller or gamepad. I'm sure they have them like the first column, but same thing. It's very simple to do, and then you'd still be swapping in on like Philosopher's Stone and Dead King Scepter, which I'll cover kind of in a separate video. But or the whole concept of artifact switching, I'll cover in a separate video. But like I said, for this rotation, you're only swapping in Strategist card and Gemini. Worst case scenario, you can leave Gemini on the entire time, but you're still sitting at 1.4 mil just between the 3 powers. Okay, so in terms of a non-Dervish or like a non-gem spam loadout, we are going to be looking at Wildfire, Clip of Stoke Flames. Stoke Flames is going to set up our burning, give us a dot, Flashpoint, Mastet, Robot Sidekick, and Neo Venom Boost. Artifacts are going to be Transstrat Grim. And the reason why I'm using Mastet, I'd like to preload damage. So when you're thinking of like a hallway ad, if you beat a first set of ads and the tank's going towards the second group, I can load up a Mastet, run towards them, and basically proc the damage. So even if it's much farther away, I can preload that damage for when the tank hits. So you can similarly do it with Fireburst, but it's a lot easier with Mastet. And Mastet's max range. So even if the tank's running, boom, I get that Mastet damage right away. And with Fireburst, you have to deal with a cooldown being 4 seconds after you deal with the animation. So the animation cooldown doesn't start until Fireburst is actually done. Mastet's 1 second. So it doesn't interfere with any kind of rotation. If I do, you want to use that preloaded damage. So if I'm waiting for the tank even. So if there's a set of ads here, the tank's done, he's about to go. I've got this whole time for the tank to aggro those ads before they jump me because I used mass stat beforehand. So it's a nice, I wouldn't even call it a trick. It's just it's the same thing Gadgets used to do, Mental used to do back during the AM days, while they preloaded their EMPs and mass terrors to hit. So it's a much easier to do that with mass stat. I like doing it. Perfect example would be like, or easiest example to show would be like those Flash to the Future. Or no, Flash Tastic Voyage, sorry. Keep mixing up those names. But after the Grodd fight, you've got all those little sets of ads in the hallways. Well, while you're running toward it, you can have mass stat preloaded because those ads are really low health anyway. Hit them with a mass stat, boom, they're dead. Or they have massive damage, especially if mass stat crits. So you have that extra damage all the way at the start. So let's jump in and show you the rotation here. So you saw with that one, you're going to have some fluctuations. You're also going to have some chat spam here because I'm doing this right before shutdown. But you are going to have some fluctuations. I mean, if mass stat doesn't crit, then yeah, you're going to have like a 90k parse. It's going to be a little bit lower. But even if you get mass stat critting once, then you're looking at the 1 points. You know, you had 1.1, you had 1.2, you had 1.35 in there. So it is a little bit of the crit game, but in content, you know, you're going to have that extra might. Mass stats damage is going to be a lot higher, so even if it crits, you're good. So a little bit of fluctuation with that build. But that's why it's a non-super speed build. Okay, so for one variation for the might single target loadout. Now this loadout is going to be more towards fights with heavy AoE components. So for example, like the Trigon fight in QE, you're looking at the Grail fight in Fractured Godsphere. You're looking at the final fight in Flash to the Future, Flash Tastic Voyage. So because we've got the AoE component from Spontaneous Combustion, we've got the AoE component from Soul Amplifier on the Explosion proc and Burning Dots, and we've got the AoE from Wildfire. So we've got the first three abilities that have AoE components, and then we've got Snuff Out. So we've still got the single target from Heat Vision and Snuff Out. We got the AoE procs and Spontaneous Combustion, which will get each proc because Heat Vision's following that. So same thing. You could any kind of channel ability following Spontaneous. So if you could follow it by Absorb Heat, whichever. But this load will be specifically garnered towards those heavy AoE fights. So in terms of the spec, nothing changes. It's still going to be the exact same as the DPS spec. Artifacts is going to be Strategist, Soul Amplifier, and Transformation. And the reason why Transformation is that third slot is so that I could swap into Philosopher's Stone or Dead King or Gemini when I need to, or Scrap for Soul Cloak. So that's why I have that in that third slot, so I can easily swap into it. So let's show you what this rotation will look like on this single target. Okay, so you get the idea there. So once again, these are not pure single target fire numbers. You can certainly, like, I don't need the comment section saying, oh, those are low numbers for a sparring target. Of course they are, because this is not a pure single target build. But this is to show you that on pure single target, you're still getting 62, 61, 62, up to 68, 64. And this is a build designed for AoE as well. So if you have like all those bosses in Flash to the Future, if you're using a pure single target build, you're missing all the AoE from Wildfire. You're missing, because Wildfire can easily crit high as a high crit magnitude. You got missing the explosion proc from Heat Vision. You're missing most likely you're running spontaneous combustion regardless on pure single, but you're missing all that extra damage. So that's why even if you're running, like, say, my pure single target build, if you're running that, say, on a boss fight with a bunch of adds, you're losing all that splash damage. So just depends what you're looking for. I mean, if you don't care and you want pure single target, then sure, you can use that build because it's going to have higher numbers. But then if you're looking at numbers overall, because it's not just one target we're talking about, then there you have it. So this is going to be a little bit for those AoE situations. Like, for example, like QE. Trigon first boss, 100% use this rotation. Trigon second boss, or sorry, not Trigon, but QE second boss on Empress Eye. Obviously, you wouldn't use this because you don't need the AoE from Heat Vision. You don't even need the AoE from Wildfire. So then you'd use the pure single target build. Okay, so looking at the pure single target variation of the Fire Might single target, we're still using spontaneous combustion with the burning PI. We're going to guarantee we get all the procs out of spontaneous combustion by using absorb heat after the fact. Same thing with Heat Vision, but absorb heat is going to be purely single target, and we don't have the run solo amplifier. And then we're using Snuff Out the finisher right after that. Wildfire is on there. You're not using Wildfire, you're just using this first three abilities. But because you're in a channel for Absorb Heat and Snuff Out, there could be situations where you're knocked out of it or stunned out of it in an actual raid combat. And that's going to mess up your animation cooldowns. So then you're using Wildfire. So Wildfire is just there as a filler power. If there's like large AoE, like say even Trigon first boss, you're using this in QE. And you're using just these three abilities, you can always sub in Wildfire as a fourth power for when the Emperor's Eyes come out if you don't want to use like Heat Vision, etc., or like my single target AoE build. So you can certainly use Wildfire in that situation, then go back to your pure single target melee, or sorry, not melee, but pure single target, and then rounding out with Robot Sidekick and the Venom Boost. So let's touch in and show you what that actually looks like on the sparring target. Okay, so you get the idea there. What was it? right there. So constantly mid 60s to high 60s, 74, 76, 72. And then there's no point in continuing because then you're going to have the snuff out 35% damage kick in. And the other thing you have to remember this rotation is you can go a little bit higher risk versus reward because, like I said before, Wildfire's there in case you get knocked out like snuff out or absorb heat. But if you don't, you can always drop Wildfire and pick up like another supercharge for like a gem spam build. So then if it is an AoE fight, you can go for max single target burn with those 3 powers, and then have your 2 Gemini builds, like Gemini supercharges, like Fireball Barrage or Speed Drain, Bloom, Neo Venom Boost. You have those supercharges to account for your AoE, so you can always swap in on one of the channels. So, say for example, if I'm doing a channel, if I'm doing Absorb Heat, I can easily pop in Gemini. Oh, what did I kick off there? Sorry, we'll drop Robot Sidekick here just so it's not there. Yes, like I said, you have Transformation. If you need to drop on either Gemini, if you're in the middle of Absorb Heat, boom, Gemini's on. Then you can pop your Supercharge and go into Snuff Out. Same thing if we'll wait for Snuff Out to come back. So Snuff Out, if I'm on that, have to cancel back. Boom. I switch Supercharges, or switch artifacts. Just in case you have to pop one of those superchargers. So that's all it is. So, I mean, if you need the time, you can always swap that in if you want to run that. So this one is more of a safer setup rewarding Wildfire because I have found myself interrupted on Absorb Heat or Snuff Out a few times where I got stunned or like a boss had like a pushback attack or something like that. And then you're basically sitting there helpless until a cooldown comes up, or at least a Wildfire you can continue on DPSing. So there it is there. In an actual combat, because you're gonna have the augment buffs and everything else, you're easily sitting at like you're in the 80s and 90s there for single target in actual content, because this is just on the sparring targets with the base stats. So there's your single target. Okay, so for a ranged build AoE for fire, we're looking at Inferno, Freezing Breath, Mass Det, Fire Burst, Sidekick, and Neo Venom Boost. So that is a lot of channels on there, but Freezing Breath you're canceling after the just a few ticks anyway. Mass Det is basically your filler power in between that. Fire Burst isn't max range, it's going to be mid-range. But like I said before, there's rarely any content in this game you can't mid-range. Plus, you can move while you're in Fire Burst, so even if you're range, move in, do Fire Burst, move back out, because Mass Det's max range, Inferno's max range, and Freezing Breath is max range. So artifact-wise, it is Trans-Strat Grim, but you can substitute Lanera's Amulet and take out Grim if you want. That is certainly a possibility. You have that option, just depending on what your group's at or survivability in terms of that. But that is certainly an option with that. Other than that, everything else stays the same. There are head mods, weapon mods, all kind of stuff. But that is your option there. You can substitute Lanera's Amulet for Grim in this situation because you have the Burning from Inferno, so you don't have to worry about that for the PI setup for any of the other abilities. So let's jump into the rotation. Okay, so you get the idea there. It's just keeping Inferno up every 12 seconds, and basically all you're doing is rotating Mass Det in between the cooldowns of Freezing Breath and Fire Burst. And like I said before, you can move around in Fire Burst to get closer, further away. Freezing Breath, you'd be locked in an animation, but you're just tap canceling that. So what I mean by that is, if Freezing Breath I'm using the power, you can just tap cancel it. So you don't have to jump cancel, you don't have to do anything. Just if you're in Freezing Breath, tap the animation, wait for the tick, and then cancel off. And making sure you don't jump cancel Mass Det, because that'll cancel the channel. Okay, so welcome to the precision side of the guide. Now, in terms of a spec, kind of ignore the glitch skill points. If you subtract the 450 from 957, that's like 500 skill points, like 507, which is typical. So I mean, I've got 600 skill points on live, or 635 now, or something like that. So I would just put more into might, but I'll leave this at like around 500, just because it's more like a typical build for what players would have or what they could have. A lot easier than having 630. So you're still gonna have weapons expert, critical attack chance, critical attack damage, and maxing out precision. In terms of iconic powers, Robot Sidekick, Knee Venom Boost, and Super Strength. I mean, Super Strength for precision, it adds like a little tiny bit. It's a 10 weaponization rating. I tested it. If you got a skill point, you can throw it in there. It does make a huge difference, but I mean, maybe over the course of an entire raid, it'll add up to a little bit. Super speed, if you are super speed, you can take this pretty much down to the tree. You can take Void. I mean, what I'll say here is fire doesn't need precision fire doesn't need super speed as in terms of some of the other power sets for Prec. I've got perfectly rotations here that don't use Dervish at all, but you can use Dervish. You can use Vortex Trap. I mean, if you want to do the whole brawling Vortex Trap and Dervish cancel, you certainly can, but you don't need that as fire. Fire's got other options that can work with it. So it just depends. If you want to use that, spec down to it. If not, then don't worry about it. Same thing with like phase dodge, tornado pull, and everything. Fire doesn't need it. So for weapons, your AoE, ranged, and melee is going to be brawling. So you're taking max on the brawling tree, and you're taking Shuriken Storm Mastery. So Shuriken Storm Mastery, that means you're going to have to spec all the martial arts tree. And then for single target, it's going to be dual flurry shot. So you're going to spec all the dual wheel down. You can take Flurry Shot Mastery. You can take Explosive Shot Mastery too. The ones against one skill point may come in handy for certain situations with his ads. And then with that, you're specing all of the bow tree as well to bring that down. In terms of gear, Blast Adapter is always going to be in your weapon mod. Head mod is going to be Critical Fire Weapon 3 for that 2% extra crit chance. Neck mod is going to be Relentless Precision. Back mod is going to be Berserker. Chest mod is going to be Penetrating Strikes. Leg mod, nothing scales, don't worry about it. Hand mod is going to be Max Damage. And foot mod is going to be Tumbling Mastery. In terms of trinkets, typical setup, you're going to have your DPS trinket, Orbital Supply Drop, DPS trinket. I also know that some, I don't have it here in my inventory right now. No, I don't. I know some DPS clip with the Breakout trinket as well. It's 45-second cooldown on that one. In terms of artifacts, Trans, Strat, and Grim. Pretty much the go-to always meta. And then you have some situations where you're going to be using either Gemini for Prec. That's more for like melee brawling. So say at the start of like raids like QE or Flash-tastic Void. No, not Flash-tastic Voyage. FF. Flash to the Future. Sorry. So you got those hallway ads. You can drop your Gemini. At that point, you can drop Strategist card because it's. I mean, you're barely getting any procs off it anyway. And you're gonna need, at least with Fire Prec, you need the PI to set up burning because you don't have a power that sets up burning on your loadout except Stoke Flames. So it just depends. If you're ranged or mid range, you can get away with that. If you're max range, you can't. So it just depends. You can either drop Grim or Strategy card for that, but that's pretty much the only fourth artifact you'd be swapping in is either Gemini for those just those gem circle spams. In terms of augments, you're gonna have precision in the origin and precision in the adaptive. And same thing in your generator mods, you're gonna have precision in the reds. And the blues, doesn't really matter, you can have health or power, but health is much more preferred. Okay, so in terms of a melee build for fire, it's going to be brawling, and you're going to be using the Shuriken Storm Mastery, so making sure that you spec down into the brawling tree. Make sure you spec all the brawling in the martial arts tree, and you're taking Shuriken Storm Mastery. Into loadouts, we're looking at Wildfire, Fire Weapon, Stoke Flames, Flashpoint, Robot Psychic, and Neo Venom Boost. So how this is going to work is you're going to clip Wildfire, Fire Weapon, and Stoke Flames all together. Stoke Flames is a mid-range burning dot. It just lets you set up burning. It gives you small dot damage over time, as well as sets up burning just in case Grim's a little bit slow or you're moving to the next set of ads, etc. So you've got that burning dot. Flashpoint is basically you're going to alternate between Flashpoint and Wildfire for your Brawling Shuriken Storm Mastery clips. Rounded up by Psychic and Event Boost. So let's jump into the actual rotation and let you show you here. Okay, so it's a super straightforward melee rotation. And once again, I'm at 54k prec. I mean, I know most people are sitting at like 56 plus or 56, 57, 58. So, if you add an extra like 2,000-3,000 prec to that, then those, ones turn into 1.23. Those 1.2s turn into 1.4s and 5s. So it certainly has potential. You got plenty of hits. You got fast damage. You don't have to worry about a Dervish Clip or Vortex Trap. Very straightforward. And you still have the Burning Dot from Stoke Flames. Flashpoint doesn't even need a PI. You got Wildfire. So even if you did take off Grim and put the Gemini on, you can get away with that. You're still going to miss obviously the Grim damage you still want to put on Strategist card. But you've got the options there because you can set a Burning PI. And then you got Neo Venom to boost to round it out. So super simple, straightforward, doesn't need to require super speed. Okay, so for precision single target, the only difference between the main spec and this would be that you have to make sure you're taking your proper weapon combos for dual flurry shot, so you're maxing your dual tree, taking Flurry Shot and Explosive Shot Mastery. Not that you're going to use Explosive Shot Mastery that much, but it's one skill point, so if you need to have some AoE situations, then that's the best one to go. And then you're maxing out your bow tree as well. But in terms of everything else, how it's spec, skill points, everything stays the same as the main spec. Same thing with your gear and mods and everything, same overall spec. So for loadouts, we're using Spontaneous Combustion, Fiery Weapon, and Fire Weapon will tie into our Critical Fire Weapon mod. So for that extra 2% crit chance. Then we're using Stoke Flames, Mass Debt, which you'll make sense in a moment, Robot Psychic, and Neo Venom Boost. So the one thing that you have to make sure here, you have Grim, so it's going to set up Burning regardless for just the extra damage on Spontaneous. But if you play in mid-range, you can use Stoke Flames. You can also get away with Dervish if you want, but Dervish is going to be straight melee. That's not going to work out in most situations, but you certainly can use that instead. But for anything from mid-range to max range, you'll be perfectly fine using Mass Debt. And then what with mass dep, it's a 1.1 second cooldown. But since it's vulnerable to interrupt, that means it's a channeled power. So with a channel power, you can jump cancel it immediately. And you can see with the cooldown, it's pretty much instant because it's that 1 second. So what does that mean for flurry shotting? Well, what it means by flurry shotting is, so if you do a normal flurry shot, you can see that dovetail at the end, which is not necessary. So with mass det, it allows you to clip each time and staying always getting rid of the dovetail with mass det. You're not going to get any damage. This is purely just for clipping that dovetail flurry shot, but at least it keeps you in flurry shot animation. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's the same concept as Whirling Dervish, but at least with Whirling Dervish, you have to still manage the cooldowns of it. Where mass det, you can use it off cooldown every single time. So it may be something that you don't typically see with fire DPS, but at least from my perspective with fire precision, this is going to be quite handy. So yeah, if you want that extra dervish damage, you can do a melee, but I mean, if you're not super speed, then it's not going to be viable anyway. Fire is one of those powers where you don't have to be super speed. Sure, you can work in dervish and rotation. You can work in dervish at pretty much every single power set, but it's not required as fire. Fire does perfectly fine might and precision without dervish or without super speed powers like tornado pulse. So that's an option to use as well. So it may look a bit goofy, but you've got that 1 second clipping power each time. So it's instead of having a long flurry shot animation or having to jump click at the end and you're still kind of sitting in air, you can pretty much always do it regardless and never miss it because it's going to be off cooldown each time. So that's going to be the loadout. We can jump into the rotation here. Okay, so you get the idea there. You're pretty much consistently around 60, 58, 59, 57. You can see that I dipped. Where's my hit count? Yeah, 55 to 61. So that's just me flurry shotting. 67, 60, 60, 49. That's another script by me. 53 shots compared to 61. So I'm missing almost 10 precision shots there. So, and that's only at, what am I at? 54k prec. Like, I don't have prec on my face mod. My augments aren't even max because it's test server and it's really annoying to level. These augments are 11 and 11. So I'm still missing I wouldn't say a ton of prec, but I'm missing at least probably 1,000 to 1,500 prec, especially from the generator mods too. They're not going to be maxed. So I'm probably sitting at like what you're sitting at, like 56, 57k prec on live. So that's probably at least 2 to 3k prec that I'm missing. Also, I don't have the OP back as well. So that 67k parse with proper prec, that turns into, probably mid 70s. Same thing with all those 50s, they'll be mid 60s. So it gives you an option. So, I can't say that I've seen anyone use the mass det clip before. It just makes sense to me. I'm not like a full-time prec DPS, but at least that rotation gives the most sense to me. Once again, you can use Dervish if you want, but I feel that with the spontaneous combustion, you're clipping again the extra dot from Stoke Flames, because Stoke Flames is mid-range, so there's still plenty of room for you to hit that. You can get that consistently. You get the fire weapon crit, and then you got the mass det. Every second you can clip the dovetail flurry shot, so it just makes it really straightforward. Okay, so in terms of a range rotation, once again, still going to be Brawling Shuriken Storm. Making sure you take the Shuriken Storm Mastery. In terms of a loadout, still going to be Wildfire, Clip with Fire Weapon, Stoke Flames. Now, Stoke Flames is not a max range dot, it's mid range. You're still 99% of content in DC, you don't need that to be max range for. You can certainly be mid range for it, so you can still get that Stokes Flame dot. And worst case scenario, if you don't, you're still going to get the PI from Grim to set up the burning PI for Wildfire for it to the extra PI damage, but you should be able to position yourself that you get the Stoke Flames damage as well. And then we got, instead of Dervish or instead of another power, we've got Mass Det. Similar to the single target rotation, since Mass Det's a 1.1 second cooldown, you can pretty much clip Brawling Shuriken Storm Mastery each and every single time with Mass Det, but you still want to alternate Wildfire when it's off cooldown, so you get that extra AoE damage from it as well. And then you round it out with Robot Sidekick and the Event Boost. So let's jump into the rotation and show you what that's going to actually look like. Okay, so you get the gist there. I think one of the rotations I did a double Mass Det. You don't have to do that. But once you get the strategy card procs actually ticking, as you can see here, the difference. So I think a couple times Shuriken Storm Master would be clipped a little bit quicker or a little bit sooner than it needed to be. But I mean, when you get the strategy card procs and your proper rotation, you're sitting at like 1.4 mil. And that's, once again, that's with me missing like 2,000 or 3,000 prec. So if you had, if you have that proper like 56, 57, 50k base prec, then you're looking at a much higher rotation in terms of that. So this is just with test server stats. My augments are low. I don't have the OP back. My OP face mod isn't prec, so my generator mods aren't going to be high for prec. So I'm missing prec everywhere. Unfortunate just because it's not available to you on test, which is frustrating from that, because I'd like to be able to bring you the same comparison, so either like max might or max prec, but unfortunately I can't. So like I said, if you're getting like 1.4s, 1.3s with 2,000-3,000 less prec than you should, then you can only imagine what you're going to do when you're actually at max prec. Okay, so I wanted to have this section in here just in case people were referring to it. I'm not going to be covering the fire tank section in this video. I've already covered it completely in depth, much more than I would in a normal guide video. In the video linked here, it's up on the screen playing. It's everything you need to know about fire tanking. It's linked in the description as well as the comment section. So my goal is to have this type of video out separately, so that if you are looking into tanking in general, you don't have to click on an hour-long video or go through a video that has a little bit less detail. This one I can cover pretty much all the detail because all it is tanking. So that's why the runtime can be half an hour, 40 minutes just of tanking. So that's the video there. Any future guide you see from me for like rage or ice or whatever, if anything I cover with healing or tanking, we'll have that separate video. So make sure if you are interested in tanking whatsoever for a fire, you see that video there. Thanks.